to Spirit Coffee Talk. I'm Ginette Byro, and with me is Lisa Richmond. We are missing Elyse. She is away today, but we're happy to be here to talk to you guys about some really interesting energies at play right now. And for some of you, you may be noticing this, and some others may just be kind of floating right above it and past it. And if so, that's great. But what we wanted to talk about is how there is a stormy kind of energy, this kind of denser 4D energy at play right now that's really percolating around. And if we are not really conscious in how we're tuning in, we may just pop into that frequency instead of going higher to get the clarity or the higher frequency peaceful energies that we want to bring in, because there's this like influx of darkness essentially that's kind of come in right now. I know it surprised me. How are you feeling about it, Lisa?
Well, I feel so much of it that is transpiring around my like 3D self for sure. Like you can go right into the physical stuff around you. I know everybody's a little frustrated with the whirlwinds of the weather, the physical weather around us, what has kind of blown in, lack of sunshine, terrible spring kind of thing. Like everybody's a little bit down, I would say.
Yeah.
It's hard to reach in and hold on to that light frequency. um for myself for sure, like I would say in a day period I would go like it's not like, oh, this was a relatively all good day and then the next day is like, okay, it was whatever. It's like every single day I dip for sure. And the conscious awareness of that is almost just retrospect. I'll look back and be like, oh well, that was interesting how that went down today.
Mm-hmm.
um but I don't know, I think just even talking about it and um, acknowledging it allows me personally to have some space for it for sure. Give myself a little bit of space to be able to meet people where they're at and have some more patience and understanding that this isn't forever. When it comes to like tuning in for me, um, it's so interesting. I had a girls' weekend with my sister last weekend, and we like, of course, like we pull cards and we tune in, and we, like that's just what it looks like for us. So anyway, I was talking to her about just this, about how um I since I don't know, after college, I guess, was figured out exactly what like 4D felt like. And I was like, I have no interest hanging out there anymore. Like I just want to like bypass it straight through when I get my messages. So when I do my readings or when I'm tuning in. But what I've noticed within the current like personal but also collective energies, it takes a bit more to get there, number one. And number two, it's like a sensation, like when you're there, right? Versus when you're like feeling something that's a little bit more foggy, like it's almost like I'm getting stuck on a little bit of density.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, sorry, it's just not going to be today, or it's not now, because I can feel other things. And so it's like, and I've had to do that more lately than ever, just because I don't want to hang out there and try to. I'm like, it's not a clear path today, so I'm just gonna like 3D it all day, which is hard because 3D is really dense right now too. So I know that's a lot, but that's like a lot of like the humanness of it, and maybe a lot of what people are experiencing without having the like knowledge of exactly what that is or why that's happening. But like, why do you think, any insights on why it's harder to hang out in 5D in the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, so there so when I was talking to my guides yesterday about this, they were showing me, and I've actually been seeing this too, and come to think of it, I've had a couple people reach out asking me the same sort of theme. There have been these um, beings of darkness. Now, this is not to instill fear. It's just more simply knowledge to then know how to move through it, right? So I literally have seen these kind of dark shadowed figures that have, when they manifest for me to see them, they have red eyes. Okay, so that sounds dark and ominous, but it's just sort of how they show up. And um, my guides were telling me that they represent the density of 4D, the density of
Okay.
4D that wishes to keep humanity in 3D, because in 3D, we are somewhat shrouded in our awakening, right? We have to push through, or we have to really stand in our truth to be able to go and awaken. And they want to prevent the mass collective of awakening because then that holds humanity in this play that essentially they can kind of um, feed off of, manipulate, whatever else. I mean, that's a whole other topic. So, what I understood though, when I noticed them coming around, and a bunch of other people had mentioned it too, I was like, why are they here now? Like, we are into the summer months, we're into shift and change. The timelines are changing right now. Like, these are good things. My guides were like, but what comes up next week? What is the most powerful day? The solstice, right? So on the 20th, 21st, depending how you celebrate, where you celebrate, um, the solstice comes around, which is the longest day of light, the day where we tend to want to, whether we're doing like a pagan ritual or just joy, summer, or celebrating the day of summer, right? We are celebrating. It is a day where we sit in joy, we gather together in joy, we amplify the energies of joy through play, through music, through food, through nourishment, through things in light under the sun, which is our, highest consciousness, and we celebrate. And the more light and awakened we are, the more we amplify that on that day specifically. It's massively powerful to create this like ricochet energy. So, if there are energies on our planet in 4D that want to keep us dense, they will do as much as possible in the days leading up to lower our vibes, to prevent us from showing up in massive joy. If we are so depleted and so ragged and fear driven, we're just like, whatever, it's solstice, I'm going to stay in bed and watch Netflix, right? As an example. So that's the reason why there's this amplification of it right now, but that's also why they're giving us the clarity so we can then choose to be, like you said, like reflecting on it and being like, oh, interesting how that played out. Okay. Like you're not just ignoring it, you're looking back on it and learning, what could I have done different? You're even
Totally.
noticing what you've been feeling in a day. Because I've been feeling that too. I'm like, in the morning, I have this beautiful meditation and, feeling so good. And then I go out and there's like 10 drivers that are horrible on the road. And I'm like, what is with the world? And then there's my dip, right?
Yeah,
I'm like, what the heck? And then I have to bring myself back. And it's like this, but it's when we can consciously be in those moments, like, sure, I'm getting angry, but I'm like, what is going on right now in the energy that is causing this situation for me to experience? Right? When we can do that, then we kind of step out of that heavy weight of it and get
totally.
curious. And that's the
Totally.
PowerPoint, right?
Yeah, totally. We were talking about that like a couple weeks ago when we were like, when we can actually have the ability to step outside of it and be like, what about this is so feisty for me, or why am I triggered? Like, I know lots of people don't like the word trigger, but like, why is this just, why do I find myself riled up over this versus somebody like, if you can actually
Mhm.
step back and be like, okay, what's actually happening here?
Yeah.
I think it's a great thing to do in the moment. It takes practice for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it takes humility for self too, because I don't know about you, but like when I'm in that moment of feeling angry or like righteous about what I'm angry about because I'm right, there's a certain level of like humility and vulnerability I have to find in self to call myself out. Be
Yeah,
like, yeah, do you really need to be that angry about this? What maybe has gone on for that person? I'm like,
totally.
oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, right. So it's this funny like internal journey of
Yeah.
discovering yet another layer of self.
Yeah. You know what? Just came up as I had a chat. I always have the best talks with my daughter. She's 14 when we're driving, just her and I'm right now. I'm living like in the middle of nowhere outside of the city of Saskatoon on a farm. So everything I need to do, I basically need to drive into the city. So anyway, it's like a 45-minute drive. And so when I have my daughter with me, it's like that's like we take that time and we like dive in and we go in deep and we have the best talks. Anyway, um, she was talking about how she finds it interesting observing people when they talk, like because we have people in and out of here all the time, like farmers or whatever, talking. And she's like, it's so interesting to observe people talk. She's like, because have you ever noticed, like, she's like, I'm just noticing now, and it might have to do with the people who are talking, but she's like, so much of people's energy is taken up and used by like being so aggravated and so angry, whether it's on political stuff or whether it's the change and not understanding and like, and then not only is that taking up so much energy in their energetic space, but then having to bring it up again and talk about it again. And like you see people like bringing up the same thing that's like just drives them crazy over. And then you just sit and watch people talk about how much they hate things. They
Hmm.
kept like, I was like, yeah, like generally speaking, I'm not surrounded by that a whole lot, but like
Yeah.
as of late, it has been significant. And so it's just so interesting because you're like, literally, you could take all that energy that you have. Like, I'm not saying things don't have to bother you, but like if you step away and become curious of it instead of, um, hold on a sec, my Zoom just went away. Okay, here. If you decide to be curious about it and be like, oh my gosh, like this is really affecting me, you know, like what we talked about, versus absorbing, you know, that anger and the frustration of whatever happened, even if it's something that's, you know, happened to you or that it's really triggering or something that's you're really against, absorbing it, holding on to it enough to bring it up, therefore bring it to the forefront of your mind in conversation over and over and over again. And then you find your like anxiety like rise every time you talk about it, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's such, I hate to say this and I mean it with love, but like such a waste of energetic space for you, right? And so I think that's another thing that's really allowing me to be conscious is that I'm like, I want to feel good. Everybody wants to feel good. But when it's a little bit trickier in times like this, when you're feeling like, I need a little extra to like help me out here, be very conscious about your like energetic grid of like where you're, how much you're taking in versus how much you're taking out. Like be aware of that kind of stuff, because if you're not, when you're already trying to get your energetic space up into a frequency where you can like look past it, if you're going back into something that is really aggravating or over and over again, you're clearly going to create this density and you're going to feel this restriction and like this like hovering, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So it's like just conscious awareness of that is like how often do we continually bring up things
Hmm.
over and over into the forefront of our mind that is very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And how much control we have to change it if we become curious. And I love that you use that word because I think the word curious or the act of being curious is essentially the armor to negativity. We can change the frequency of negativity if we look back at it with curiosity. Like you said, instead of absorbing it, we have an armor of curiosity. Why is this happening? I love that. I think that is something we can really hold on to as we move through this energy leading up to the solstice. Um, because
What is solstice routine? Like what's something that you do? Like, okay, let's go into the light here. What is a tradition or something that you do on solstice?
one thing that I tend to do is I charge all my crystals in the longest day, right? Like it's the longest day. So like I'll put them out the night before. I'll charge all my crystals. So that's one thing. That's like the super battery charge.
Yeah.
Um, the
On
other
on like a piece of wood or something natural?
Well, I have this beautiful window in my bedroom, and the ledge of it, like it gets sun all day because it's south facing. So I just lay them right out on the ledge,
Amazing.
right? So I mean, it's a wooden ledge, but yeah, I do that. And then there's always a point of or meditation. But this year, I'm feeling really called to like
Mhm.
essentially dance in the energy of the sun. So what I
I was
mean
gonna
by
say
that.
move your body. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to just be outside in movement and like carefree. So whether that ends up being gardening or at a park or a playground or whatever, it's like being carefree under the light, the solar consciousness. I just want to be
Is
with
it
it.
supposed to be nice there?
I haven't looked yet because I don't want to
It's
I don't want
supposed
to
to
feel
be like
negative about it.
terribly like pouring rain. But I can dance in the rain. That's
Yeah,
fun too.
yeah, you totally can. Yeah, it's really whatever you can do to bring in joy is what's so important with it.
I remember once when I was affiliated with an old yoga studio, it was like my first solstice. I was just like learning and I was so exciting. And she hosted this, like, hold on, can you hear that sound? There's like construction going all over the house. You can't hear that? Okay, good. Anyway, so she's like, okay, we are getting together and there's a field behind the studio and we're gonna all lay out our mats and we're gonna do 108 sun salutations.
Oh, yeah.
And because 108, so I was like, oh, amazing. So I get my like new mat and everything. Again, I was in really good shape at that point, but 108 is harder than you might think. And then we're in this field, and the grass is like high grass and it's kind of dry, and like the mosquitoes are terrible. And like we're getting like hay fever. One of the girls has like hives, like there's only like 6 of us, and we're trying to breathe and we're trying to be like so sacred about it. When we finished it up, we're like, ah! So we rolled up our mats and we went and had a beer. In our like sweaty yoga stuff. We're like, that was really great. It was
Oh my
really
God.
great. I'm glad I did that. That was really sacred.
That's hilarious. Oh my gosh, I love the humanity in that. That's perfect. Hives and all, drinking beers. You're trying to be all sacred. It's like,
So I'm having a difficult time breathing.
yeah, right. But you know what? I think that's the thing is like for the solstice, I mean, it really, people can honor it however it feels right to them. Like
Totally.
truly, it's your intent behind how you're going to do it, which matters. And really, that's it. If it's a simple little thing, if it's hay fever and beer, then it's hay fever and beer. That's hilarious. What are you going to do?
Well, I move into my new house the next day. So I'm probably like, there's some 3D stuff I definitely have to do. Like I'm gonna be packing up everything I have here. We're gonna be like getting it all ready. But I don't know, with the kids, I always like explain it. Like when we did winter solstice, like they are just sponges for that kind of stuff. So if there's anything to do with crystal charging, they're on it. So I'll probably get us all to collect all our crystals and go find some farm crystals to add to the mix and like do all that. So we'll probably charge our crystals. Definitely dance. We'll maybe make a playlist, a music playlist, and whether it's inside or outside. But
Nice.
yeah, just play, I guess.
Nice. I love that. And that's perfect. Like that's really what it is. It's about celebrating, right? Gathering together and celebrating. And if you're in a position where you can't gather with physical people, you can gather with your guides. You can invite them in and gather with them too. Like we're not alone in the act of gathering wherever we are. So,
So when talking about cycles with like solstice, when I used to do women's retreat kind of for women's yoga, I integrated things that was our cycle, like a 28 day cycle. Even if you don't have a regular cycle, it's still like kind of the full moon represents like your fertility, right? With the ovulation kind of time, and the new moon is the dark, and that's when you'd have like your menstruation. But the whole year is kind of in the cycle, and I always said that solstice was like the full moon of the month, but of the whole year. So what you would do for like a full moon ceremony, it's like for the entire year. So it's like that much amplified, right? So like you can really dance and plan and like celebrate. It's just like this big celebration. So
mhm.
very much like the winter solstice then would be like the new moon, right? Where you come in retrospect and you like, look at all the things and whatever come inside more. This one is like the amplification of the celebration of life, coming out and dancing and like being playful and all of
Mhm.
that. So
I love that. I think
mhm,
that's great. And I think
yeah,
that's a great way to balance out kind of that heavier dense energy we're still kind of walking through right now is like focusing on the energy that will be with the solstice and just keep your line of sight there. And it's funny because when I was pulling cards this week too, at different times I kept pulling the focus card, focus card, focus card. And I think that's so exactly what it is. It's
yeah.
just keep your focus on that and just plow through this
The
path
light.
right now.
Stay in the light. Honestly, even if it doesn't have to be like a very, very difficult way of being like, no, I won't have negative thoughts. just be curious. Like we said, acknowledge, be like, oh, whoa, that just took up a ton of my energetic space. And it felt really like heavy. I feel like I expressed myself. I got it off. I've recognized this. Now I need to do something fun. Now I need to shake it off. Now I need to take a sec for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think the more that we do that, the easier it is to let it go then, instead of bringing it up again and again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then balance that off with some play, with some movement, with some, because that's the time of year we're in. Even if it's rainy and it's not as pretty as it usually is,
Mm-hmm.
we're in that energetic time of year. And so use that to your advantage.
Yeah. Absolutely. Beautiful. I love it.
Well, next week, I don't know if I'm going to have internet. I don't know if I'll be at my new house, but I don't know how it'll go. But I hope to be here next week in my new surroundings. There might be boxes everywhere, but then we can talk about what we did that week and how it was, and the celebrations and how we stayed in the light. This was really inspiring to
Yeah, it
help me
was. It was
remember
for me
to
too.
stay in the light. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. All right, then. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We truly appreciate you. If this is your first time, please do subscribe, share, hit the like button. That helps with the algorithm so that other people can receive this inspiration. So, thank you guys so much. Check out avalonspirit.com for more, and we will see you guys next week.